A Giants podcast for Giants fans by Giants fans. It's Shaun Morash.
Down the sideline, into the end zone. Touchdown, Giants!
From the offseason to the wins and the losses, it's time to take one Giants step with your host, Shaun Morash.
All right, welcome into One Giant Step. Remember, always free on the Audacy App and everywhere podcasts are available. I'm your host, Shaun Morash, in a rare victory week, the second one here of the season for the New York Football Giants as they beat the Commanders 14-7, setting ourselves up as producer James, was hoping for, where I picked the Giants to get burned on a last-second field goal. Still kind of think there was a chance they could have got burned on a last-second two-point conversion. But nonetheless, positive vibes. The Giants have won a football game and now continue to embark on a stretch of, debatable but winnable games. Joining us from the Star Ledger, NJ.com, somebody who doesn't flip hot dogs or hamburgers. His name is Darryl Slater. Darryl, what's going on, man?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's just get into a quick little recap on this game. It ends up 14-7. Giants hang on for dear life, get all 14 points in the second quarter. And we'll do a lot of Tyrod versus Daniel Jones in a little bit, as Twitter and X or social media just cannot stop loving themselves from Tyrod Taylor. But as far as this game goes, there was a report that came out Sunday morning, might have been Leonard that had it, about Dable kind of taking over some of the offensive meetings. The offense did look like it was moving the ball a heck of a lot better. It does feel like, even though Justin Pugh was getting burned, his veteran leadership is helping that line a little bit. Tyree Phillips played well at right tackle. And this is a team in the Washington Commanders that stinks, just like the Giants stink. So it hasn't been as much of a brutal schedule. What do you think is the biggest reason, other than defense, which we'll get to in just a second, that things just felt and looked different on Sunday?
Well, they were able to get some semblance of pass protection, and they were able to play with a lead. So they were not necessarily as one-dimensional as they had been in previous games, where they had to throw the ball to catch up. They got competent line play, and they were able to push the ball down the field. You talk about the Jalen Hyatt deep ball. Obviously, that would have iced the game if Saquon Barkley hadn't fumbled the ball away later in that drive. So they were able to move the ball better. I mean, the bar was so low considering how poor they had been on offense. But they were able to move the ball better and get some semblance of production from their offense. Now, 14 points isn't going to win you a lot of games, but it's certainly better than what they were doing. And I think Dable had to step in and do more last week. That's his area of expertise. So I think did it pay off? Is that a direct correlation? I think perhaps, but they also, as you said, played a winnable game at home against a bad team, and they won.
Yeah, a team that they seemingly always either beat or tie. We've seen the snap counts completely increase here for Jalen Hyatt and, to a lesser extent, Wan'Dale Robinson. Isaiah Hodgins kind of getting put on the back burner. Does this feel like this is the recipe the Giants have to go, like, where this isn't maybe necessarily about matchups and who they're playing, but going forward, this has to be a 1A, 1B situation where Hyatt and Wan'Dale Robinson develop into their top two receivers?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, obviously, results will dictate how how much guys are going to play, but they need to get these younger guys in. Hodgins is younger, but he's really not part of their future. They drafted Hyatt and traded up to draft him for a reason. They're fascinated by his deep threat ability, and rightly so. I mean, this is a team that needs to push the ball down the field. They're the worst deep passing team in the NFL over the last 3 years. So that's why they picked Hyatt, and you've seen it. I mean, he played well against Arizona. He played well yesterday. 4 total catches in those 2 games, all of them at least 30 yards. So that's why they picked him. And so, yeah, I think that's sort of going to be their recipe going forward.
Do you think the presence of Saquon coming back the last 2 weeks has had a lot to do with their ability again to push the ball down the field, with defenses kind of eyeing in on Saquon, or do you think that's purely coincidental?
No, I think absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think they've been able to move the ball and in terms of running it and make him a threat. Obviously, Matt Breida is a fine backup running back, but he's not Saquon Barkley. And so the ability to have defenses respect your running game and not just, as they say, pin their ears back and go after what is a flawed offensive line. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Now, before we get to the defense, one last thing that has to be touched on is special teams, which every week I cannot believe that this is the organization where every week special teams has to be talked about. Now, they did get a blocked field goal, which was great, but fielding punts. I mean, Eric Gray, who feels like he's been force fed. I know Dable was asked whether this was just a matter of, hey, you're trying to justify a draft pick, get him touches. He cannot field punts. I don't want to hear about the swirling winds. This has been an issue all year. But then Sterling Shepard goes back there after he, by the way, starts the game playing 5 straight offensive snaps, and he drops a punt. You feel horrible. Slayton goes there. I know they added the guy from New England on Monday. I mean, how much is just, going to become a problem? And do you think, is it Olshinsky? Is he going to become the punt returner for this team?
Right, yeah, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Gunner is his
I,
first name.
yeah, we'll
Uh,
call him Gunner. Who
so
cares?
he's been I guess that's ironic, right? Because of punt coverage, you have
Yes.
Gunners. He's the he's a candidate. Jay Corbin, they signed him off the
Right.
Panthers practice squad. He's a candidate to go back there as well. The problem, Gray, it's an unfortunate and almost unfair spot for him. He didn't really
Right.
have a lot of experience in that area, so they're kind of you could argue, should they have kept Jamison Crowder? Well, look, I mean, like Crowder is an older player who wasn't part of their future. On the
Oh,
flip side of that, you're talking about a team where if they're going to win close, low scoring games. I mean, we saw all the close games they won last season.
yeah.
So the margin for error is thin. So why put yourself in a position where you can lose that margin for error on something like a muffed punt? And
Yeah.
so, in fairness to Shepard, that's not his role. They need to get somebody back there who can at least competently field punts and go from there. And so, yeah, I mean, they got a big punt block, but this is a situation where Thomas McGahee's absolutely going to be on the hot seat. He's survived now what a couple coaching changes, and
He's like a cockroach, Darryl. He just
yeah, and
he
so I
survived.
don't know. I don't know if this is maybe it for him. We'll see.
Now, you walked me right into my next question I was going to have for you. And again, this is Darryl Slater, Star Ledger, NJ.com. I am obviously a longtime Giant fan that respects Sterling Shepard, feels horrible about the injuries he's had in his career, and I understand that he's making minimal, no money on this team. I totally get it. It is you just brought up Hodgins not being a part of the future, the evolution. You could see the wide receiver room, and shockingly, they've been healthy there. Where I think the Giants, to a man, probably padded all these guys in camp, assuming a lot of injuries would pop up. I look at Jamison Crowder being able to field punts for Washington, like you mentioned the margin era, and I can't help but think, did they keep Sterling Shepard here for leadership, nostalgia, and kind of it was so unnecessary where Crowder would have been a lot more helpful to this team just in the return game alone?
Sure, I think that probably is part of it. He's here because he's an established guy in terms of a locker room guy, and obviously he's not part of their plan. And you saw that reflected in the contract. I mean, they made him take a pay cut to even stick around last year. I was shocked that he resigned. Quite frankly,
I was too.
I thought they were just going to let him walk. I thought he was done when he tore his ACL last year. I thought he was finished with the Giants, and maybe, quite frankly, finished in the NFL. And that may be the case, honestly, next year. But yeah, he's on the backside of his career, a guy who's worked hard for this team, and but just the injuries have caught up to him, and
Yeah.
he's not a guy right now who can help them offensively. Now, if somebody gets hurt, he's an insurance policy. I think that's how they view him.
Yeah, and that's fine. I was stunned. I was sitting in 146 on Sunday and watching Sterling Shepard play 5 straight offensive snaps to start the game. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, the game plan changed, and he really wasn't a part of it after that. But like, what is up with that? Even too, is that just again you feel bad you haven't gotten him involved? Let's try to see if he's involved early, and then we'll go back to playing the other receivers. Just seems so weird. Their forcefulness with just trying to take care of Sterling Shepard, just odd to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they probably view things pretty objectively, and that it's maybe not necessarily ego grooming or anything like that, but maybe they just saw something there they thought they could take advantage of. I don't know, but
Right,
it
and they
was a
didn't.
little odd. Yeah,
Right, they didn't because that first series was awful. All
right.
right, now obviously the real reason they beat the Commanders, we can talk about offense all we want. They only scored 14 points. The defense for the second straight week, this defense was flat out balling. And I would argue 3 out of the 4 weeks, people seem to forget the defense played awesome versus Seattle. It was Daniel Jones that couldn't get out of his own way, kind of creating his own mess and battered and stuff. But 3 out of 4 weeks, they even had the turnovers versus Miami, but they couldn't play with that speed. There are guys up and down this defense that, as a fan, I'm starting to fall in love with. What do you, attribute the biggest turnaround for this defense being?
Yeah, look, the Deontay Banks has really come on. I
Right.
think that
Doesn't look
he's
like a rookie corner right now.
no, I mean, and he's going to have hiccups, but we all knew that. But he's got the confidence and I guess maybe forgetfulness would be the right word to move past bad plays and to continue to play confident. And let's see. I'm fascinated to see how they match him up with Garrett Wilson on Sunday. A couple really confident young players in Wilson and Banks, and so yeah, I think that's been part of it. The fact that on Sunday their offense let them play with a lead so they could go after a guy who had been really vulnerable in Sam
Right.
Howell to sacks, and they made the most of that opportunity, of course. And so, yeah, I think that's been a big part of it. They like you said, it's been over their quiet kind of defensive progression here has been overshadowed by the fact that they've been losing.
Right.
You mentioned all the bright spots they had against Seattle and Miami, and then they played great against Buffalo, and they carried that forward. And talking to Xavier McKinney after the game on Sunday, he mentioned, look, we go out as a defense and we say we're going to try to beat the other team's defense, which isn't something you hear a lot of defensive players say. Because I was asking him, I was like, yeah, the Jets have a great defense, and they like to talk a lot about how great they think they are. And he's like, well, we'll see. I know they're not playing the Jets defense per se, but that's not how they view it. They look at that like they are going to have to win a rock fight like they did on Sunday. And I think that's where this game probably will go, low scoring game.
Yeah, and look, I know I could have big blue goggles and glasses on, but I'm very critical of the Giants often. I see the talent on the Jet defense, and the way the Giant defense is coming along, I mean, they got some names too. Like, I don't think the gap can be that crazy as long as Wink's getting after it, especially if Deontay Banks is developing. Now, Adoree Jackson misses the last game. I don't know where he stands in health. We're taping this on a Tuesday. Obviously, we're going to know more on Wednesday, Thursday for a lot of these guys. But do you think the Giants view Deontay Banks as their number one corner now, not necessarily Adoree?
Well, certainly for the future. Yeah, I mean, and Adoree Jackson has not played that well this year, and part of
Right.
that
The
is,
slot stuff, and
yeah,
he
the
was
slot
getting
stuff. But I
pushed.
mean, really, he has played a significant amount of outside corner snaps. Um, would they trade him? I mean, the problem is like he hasn't played that well. He's dealing with the neck, so I don't know what he'd be. If team would trade for him, he's got an $11 million salary. Team would have to pay about half that. So, I mean, clearly he's not going to be with the team next year. Adoree Jackson. I mean, they drafted Deontay Banks to be their number one corner going forward. Now, if he
Right.
can take that role and seize it right now, I think they'd be thrilled because that's how they certainly
Yeah.
view him for the future.
And, one of my guys was becoming a favorite, and I was so disappointed with his camp, as was everybody. It feels like Cordell Flott is coming along as a nickel corner here. He makes a play seemingly in every game. Now, it doesn't mean he's having a picture perfect game, but there's at least one play a game where I'm like, damn, that's a great breakup by Cordell Flott. And I know that, again, that's a high investment on Joe Shane's first draft. People seem to forget he was a third round pick there as well. That's another one of these young corners that I think has been a part of this because, again, when they're playing Adoree in the slot to start the year and Hawkins on the outside, now they've done this transition. It feels like that's helped a lot too, having Flott be a little more reliable in the slot.
For sure, and it lets them play Jackson on the outside, which is where he belongs. Flock can play either spot, but they really did draft him in the third round to be the guy who could replace Darnay Holmes, who hasn't quite frankly played that well throughout his career, a
Right.
fourth round pick. But they drafted Aaron Robinson the next year, and Aaron Robinson just hasn't been able to get in the field. Then they tried to,
Where is he, Darryl? We haven't heard any update on it. When I was at camp, he was at
yeah.
least running on the side. Where is he?
Yeah, I mean, still on IR and still recovering. I think he had surgery in November, so it's just been a slow process for him. Clearly, they've moved on from him, and they finally perhaps feel like they have a guy in Flott who can be their reliable slot guy. And also, if they have an injury on the outside, he can maybe step into that role. He did do a little of that last year. So maybe I think now after going forward after this year, they got to figure out, okay, they're going to have another outside corner. Will it be Flott? And then they put somebody else in the slot, or how do
Right.
they handle that? Because Jackson will be gone, Banks will be the number one,
Unless
Flott will be
Hawkins
there.
does develop, though, Daryl,
Hawkins,
maybe.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I haven't loved Hawkins, but
I
again, he's a
know,
six
yeah.
round rookie, so
They
who
need to
knows?
see more from him.
100%. All right, real quickly, one more in the defense that I have this. Clearly, we see the pass rush coming along. Dex absolutely ate. Kayvon, look, he's hit or miss on some of these plays, but you look up, he's top 10 in sacks in the league right now. So you ask him to get after the quarterback, he gets to the quarterback. Micah McFadden, is this a case of like, hey, he's the workman-like guy we all fall in love with, or do they really have something here? Because he has just become a tackling machine at inside linebacker. And I know, he's inside linebacker too. Okereke is the star there, and he's making a ton of plays too. But it kind of feels like Micah McFadden, this is going beyond like really cool story where he tackled a bunch of 49ers to this dude could play.
Yeah, and I agree. I think he can. I mean, he is a classic case of a guy who really did not play well as a rookie and looked lost at times, especially in coverage, and has managed to settle down and take the next step in year two, having an off season in the system as opposed to getting thrown in right after the draft. Now he wasn't ready to play last year by his own admission, and I think the extra experience here, he's blown past Darian Beavers in camp,
Yeah.
and he sees that
I didn't
job.
even
And
think about that. Think about that. It was supposed to be
right,
Beavers off the ACL. Everybody was gonna be in
yeah,
love with McFadden wasn't good. I mean, He looks more than just like a Tay Crowder plug and play. Like this looks like a foundational inside linebacker for this team.
Sure, absolutely, and then it's not necessarily going to be an every down role, but what he does is so valuable in terms of being able, especially to stop the run. Which is, you look at all the games the Giants lost last year, especially the Eagles. They couldn't stop the run to save their lives, and they got destroyed against the run. They were a terrible run defensive team last year, and the fact that they have this guy who in early downs can play steadily is enormously impactful.
All right. So this leads us down the road here after this Washington game. We've now seen two Tyrod Taylor games that have resulted in 9 points and 14 points. Again, the lack of scoring, not all on Tyrod Taylor when you consider the fumble that Saquon had, but Daniel Jones has had some of those breaks go as well. There's a report, Jonathan Jones from CBS, saying no quarterback controversy. Dable poured cold water on that as well. I will fully tell you, I've been frustrated with Daniel Jones this year. But I also don't think I've seen enough from Tyrod Taylor. I feel like we are responding to insane defensive efforts. The fact that the Giants have now been really competitive. I think he's pushed the ball down the field, which is something that Daniel Jones has been scared to do. But I really would like to see Daniel Jones with a healthy Saquon again, Andrew Thomas coming back. I don't think that Tyrod Taylor has at least done enough in my mind to make me feel like there is a controversy. How do you feel?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, how low is the bar where we're like talking about this after a 14-point game? 14 points.
Right.
Like that's
Well,
like
everybody with all 22 film on Twitter. Oh, look what Tyrod does. I mean, Daniel Jones has done enough of that. He did it versus Arizona, too.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's yeah, right. And then he Tyrod Taylor or Tyrod, I guess, however he pronounce it now. He played great against a pretty great against a bad team, and so did Daniel Jones against the Cardinals. And now,
Right.
and here's a stat to remember. There's been just one game this season that the Giants have had Andrew Thomas, Daniel Jones, and Saquon Barkley together on the field. That was week one. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, they got destroyed, but
And health wise, when you consider where Thomas got hurt, he like that 1 quarter, really.
exactly right. Yeah, chasing down the blocked field goal. And so if they can get all three of those guys back next week, I think Thomas probably will come back against the Jets. We know Barkley's back. We'll see on Jones. I think a lot of this obviously depends on will he be cleared for contact. It's not really up to him. So will it be a shorter leash when he comes back? I don't know. I mean, they invested in this guy $82 million over 2 years. They have an escape hatch after 2024. Yeah, they need to see something from him now and over the course and next year too. And like, let's be
Right.
honest, if they draft high next year, and they're terrible this year, do you
Yeah.
take a quarterback in the first round
If
or
he's
maybe in the
there, yeah,
third
and you
round?
really like a guy,
Yeah.
you can't say no to that. Absolutely.
Right, right. And so the Eagles have shown like being bold at the quarterback position and drafting a guy before you feel like you're totally done with the other guy, which is what they did with Hurts and Wentz. It works. And
Right.
so it can work. So yeah, no, I don't, but in terms of the immediate future, no, I mean, Daniel Jones will be the starter when he comes back, but any struggles he does have, particularly behind a more intact line and with Saquon Barkley, the spotlight will be on those a lot more, especially when they play a team like they play Washington again and he doesn't play well. If they play Vegas again and he doesn't play well. So we'll see what kind of line they're able to trot out there against a really, really good Jet defense on Sunday.
Do you think a lot of Daniel Jones' struggles were like a mental thing where he was just getting beaten? And now, as much as he's physically hurt, if he comes back, that mental reset, being able to sit back, see that the offense is pushing the ball down the field. I mean, is that the kind of thing you think maybe clicks with him and going, all right, deep breath, I could do this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, he's been pressured 46% of the time this year. 46% of the
It's
time.
just
That's
insane.
untenable. Now you
Right.
look at the number from the other day, Taylor's pressure rate was 33%. That's much more easy to deal with. The guy Jones got hurt on his 16th sack in a two-game stretch. It's you can't that's not you can't win that way. I
Right.
don't care who the quarterback is. And so yeah, I think if they're able to get Thomas back, that lets them kick Pugh inside the left guard. If they're able to get Schmitz back. Now, Schmitz why wouldn't they have IR'd him if he's going to miss 4 games? Dable has said now he
Oh,
may not miss 4 games. He may not. So I asked Dable straight up, is this guy an IR candidate after the first or second game he
right.
missed? He said no. Okay, so that to me says 3 games and back. Okay, so if he comes back, he's the center. Bredesen at right guard, Pugh at left guard,
Ah,
uh,
looks like a good line
Thomas
at that point.
that's a line.
Right.
And no,
And
no,
by the way, no offense to Evan Neal, the drop
yeah,
off didn't feel extreme after Tyree Phillips spent 6 weeks
like
in the Eagles system.
he played well. He played
Yeah.
well last year too. So we'll see what they do there. But if you can have Thomas and Schmitz back, it lets you stop playing guys out of position and have a more intact line, which if you're the Giants, hopefully leads to less than 46% pressure rate for your quarterback.
I'm so glad you brought up the DJMS thing with the IR because I've thought this, and I understand that Andrew Thomas ended up having a setback with Seattle, but I
Yeah.
mean, again, we're going on another 4 weeks since then too, and now Daniel Jones has missed 2 straight weeks, and I understand that gamesmanship can be involved with, oh, is a guy playing, is a guy not playing, but I got to be honest, Darryl, I have not loved the way Dable and the staff has handled the injuries in terms of, frankly, at times wasting spots. I mean, the fact that they do some roster maneuvering last week just seems so odd to me. Like, how could they be so off on timing on guys and not just saying, all right, this is a guy that's got to go to IR? Like, what is going on with this team this year with this?
I think if Schmitz misses this game, that's a question that is become big time. I mean, the Thomas thing, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because he did miss, right? He missed the second game, the third game, and then leading into week 4 against Seattle, he had the setback. So you
Right.
can see how that would have been. He got thrown off his rehab track. With Schmitz, when the shoulder injury, I think it's a little more straightforward, right? I mean, you're not going to re-injure your shoulder while jogging, like
Right.
potentially Thomas maybe did, right? So if he misses it, you kind of wonder like, what's the deal if he misses this game? I don't know if he will. We'll
Right.
see.
Again, we are taping this on Tuesday for anybody listening to this.
Right. So we'll see what Brian Dable says tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see how they handle that. But that definitely would put a spotlight on like, why didn't you IR this guy and get a spot if he's going to miss 4 games?
So, and that would tell us too, if we really believe that they feel these guys would be back within 4 weeks. Shouldn't we
Yeah.
have optimism that Daniel Jones is going to get cleared for contact here?
Yeah. Like, I mean, what
Because
he's
now it's
missed
already 2 games down.
2 games. So, that's that I don't know. I mean, we don't the neck injury is so dependent on the scans. I'm sure that the doctors are seeing, right? And how much he's able to like move his neck and all that. I don't know exactly what they do to base that to decide whether it's contact that he can get cleared for. But yeah, like I don't if he again if he gets to the 4 game mark and he's still missing games, it's like what are you doing here? Like why couldn't you shouldn't you have seen at least the possibility of this coming? Obviously they didn't want to commit to a 4 game absence. And so they're hopeful that it can be 3 or fewer.
Okay, this is my last one I'm going to give you on the Terod Daniel Jones thing on that point. Do you think, at their core as an organization, now again, they paid Daniel Jones, that because, they kind of feel like everything's calming a little bit with Terod, even if they're not scoring, that they would pull a situation where let's hold Daniel Jones back as long as possible until we feel like, we've jumped the shark here with Terod and the wheels have fallen off a little bit with him? Or do you think that doesn't even play into their head at all?
I thought where you were going with that was more along the lines of like, let's wait until the line is intact to bring Daniel Jones back.
Well, that too, but if
Yeah,
Andrew Thom I feel like I've always felt
um,
this way
yeah,
the last 2 weeks. They want Andrew Thomas back because that's like Daniel Jones's blankie. It's like a kid's
yeah,
blankie. He
yeah.
loves that. But if Thomas is coming back, and they don't bring Daniel Jones back this week, to me, we can talk about clear for contact, whatever. I wonder if part of this is we do like the way things are going, but we could also hide behind this he's not healthy yet without actually causing a controversy when there maybe is one.
I don't think they'll do that. I think when he's
Okay.
cleared, he'll be back, regardless of what the line is. Now, let's say Thomas isn't back this week for whatever reason, or he is and Schmitz isn't back, and so you're never going to have necessarily a perfect situation. But I,
Right.
I think when he's cleared, he'll be back.
Okay. I hope he is because I want to see him push the ball, and I am rubbing my hands together as a Giant fan here on Jet Week, Darryl. Now, that being said, because I'm not going to talk to you at the end of the week, the Jet fan chirps a lot. I don't know what did you grow up a Jet fan, Giant fan? I know you cover the team now. How did you grow up?
No, I grew up in upstate New York. I guess I was kind of a front running Niner fan, maybe,
Okay.
but
All
then,
right.
then then more got into college football. But yeah, no, I used to cover the Jets, and so I still follow them obviously very
Yeah.
closely. And
This
I,
is,
I hear the confidence from over on that,
oh,
for sure.
I
Yeah.
want I want my quarterback in this game. I know they don't have theirs either. Do you think this defense has a real chance to make Zach Wilson wet himself here, Darryl?
Well, the thing to remember is he's had 2 weeks to prepare, right? So Wink
Yeah.
Martindale does blitz a lot. Now he hasn't blitzed a lot necessarily this year. They blitzed more than any other team in the NFL last year, about 40% of the time. They're like 11th this year in blitz percentage, about 30%. So
But I do think a lot of that
he's
early on was not trusting the corners on the back end, the young
yeah,
corners, and now the
sure.
last 2 weeks, I think he's trusting them way more.
Yep, fair point. And yes, I think that he'll throw a lot to try to confuse Zach Wilson because he has shown he's been able to be easily confused by pressure. But
Right.
he's had a couple weeks to prepare for what is kind of more of a unique defense. Will that help him? I don't know. I think they're going to try to run the ball as long as they possibly can with Breece Hall. Like, it could be a 35
Right.
carry game for Breece Hall. Take the ball out of Zach Wilson's hands, make the Giants stop the run, and I think that's perhaps where this game plan would be going for the Jets.
Yeah, early returns say this game could easily be 9-6. All right, you can check out Darryl Slater and the Star Ledger, NJ.com. Darryl, thanks so much, man, for joining us on One Giant Step.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks to our producer, James. We'll drop a little preview pod at the end of the week. Catch me on Evan and Tiki weekdays 2 to 6:25, free on the Audacy app and on WFAN locally. And thanks to everybody for taking one giant step with us. Thanks for watching this video. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are all in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. One giant step.